You wake across a windswept hillside thousands of years ago. The morning air is cold, the fire from last night has almost died, and everything you own depends on stone, wood, bone, and muscle. The axe beside you can cut a tree, but one careless strike against a hidden rock may shatter its edge forever. Every tool has limits, every hunt reminds you of them. Yet beneath your feet lies a material that could transform your entire world. It is everywhere. Mountains are filled with it. Rivers carry fragments of it. Even the reddish soil staining your hands is rich with it. But to your eyes, it is nothing more than ordinary rock. For countless generations, humanity walked over the greatest engineering resource on Earth without realizing it. The story of iron is not simply the story of discovering a new metal. It is the story of learning to see something that had always been there, hidden in plain sight. Long before cities rose above the landscape or kings ruled vast kingdoms, human survival revolved around stone. Flint could be shaped into razor-sharp blades. Obsidian produced edges finer than many modern surgical tools. Quartzite made dependable hammerstones. These materials allowed early humans to hunt, butcher animals, build shelters, and defend themselves. Stone launched civilization, but it also imposed invisible boundaries. A damaged spearhead often meant starting over. A broken axe could not be repaired. Every improvement demanded another carefully selected rock and another long session of shaping it by hand. As human societies grew larger, those limitations became increasingly obvious. Farming required stronger tools. Construction demanded greater durability. Warfare rewarded better weapons. Stone had carried humanity remarkably far, but it could not carry civilization forever. Around the 4th millennium BCE, communities across the Near East began experimenting with colorful minerals found inside hillsides. Some rocks displayed brilliant shades of green and blue. When these minerals were heated inside extremely hot fires, something astonishing happened. Instead of remaining stone, they released glowing droplets of metal. Copper had entered human history. For the first time, people could shape a material not by carving pieces away, but by melting it, pouring it into molds, hammering it flat, and reshaping it again and again. It felt almost magical. Copper introduced an entirely new way of thinking about technology. Yet copper brought its own frustrations. It bent too easily. Knife edges dulled quickly. Spears could warp after repeated use. Craftsmen slowly discovered that adding a small amount of tin transformed copper into something far more reliable. Bronze was born almost by accident, yet it became the foundation of the world's earliest civilizations. Bronze axes cleared forests faster. Bronze plows prepared larger fields. Bronze swords gave armies enormous advantages over enemies still relying on stone. The Bronze Age witnessed the construction of monumental temples, organized governments, written languages, and expanding trade networks. But beneath this golden era hid a serious weakness. Bronze depended on two ingredients, and one of them was surprisingly rare. Copper existed in many regions, but tin did not. Only a handful of places possessed significant tin deposits. That meant every thriving kingdom relied on merchants traveling thousands of kilometers across deserts, mountains, and dangerous seas. A failed harvest, pirate attack, political conflict, or collapsed trade agreement could interrupt the flow of tin and cripple metal production across entire regions. Powerful empires unknowingly built their technological future upon one of history's most fragile supply chains. Iron could have solved that problem immediately if anyone had known how to use it. Unlike tin, iron ore exists almost everywhere. It forms enormous deposits beneath mountains, it appears in riverbeds, it colors clay soils red across multiple continents. Nearly every ancient village lived within reach of iron-bearing rocks. Yet those rocks stubbornly refused to reveal their secret. The reason had nothing to do with intelligence. Ancient people were extraordinarily observant. They understood farming, astronomy, architecture, navigation, and mathematics with remarkable sophistication. The obstacle was chemistry, a science that would remain unknown for thousands of years. Iron almost never appears in nature as shiny metallic pieces. Oxygen binds tightly to iron atoms over immense stretches of geological time, producing iron oxides, the reddish and brown minerals we recognize today as iron ore. To ancient eyes, these minerals looked completely ordinary. They resembled countless other rocks scattered across the landscape. Nothing about their appearance suggested that they concealed the future backbone of civilization. Curiously, the earliest iron humans ever handled did not come from the earth at all. It fell from the sky. Occasionally, fragments of metallic meteorites survived their violent journey through Earth's atmosphere and landed on the surface almost intact. These strange objects behaved unlike any stone people had ever encountered. They were unusually heavy. They resisted breaking. When polished, they gleamed with a metallic shine that seemed almost supernatural. Ancient cultures quickly recognized their uniqueness. Egyptian inscriptions referred to iron as the metal of heaven. Similar ideas appeared across Mesopotamia and Anatolia, where celestial origins became inseparable from the material itself. Archaeological discoveries support these ancient beliefs. One of the most famous examples comes from the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun, where researchers discovered an elegant iron dagger. Modern chemical analysis revealed unusually high levels of nickel and cobalt, unmistakable signatures of meteoritic iron. More than 3,000 years ago, Egyptian craftsmen shaped a weapon from material that had once traveled through space. To the people who witnessed it, iron truly belonged to the heavens. Such objects were unimaginably valuable. Iron jewelry appeared beside royal treasures. Small blades became diplomatic gifts exchanged between rulers. The material's rarity gave it prestige greater than gold in some societies. Yet despite its extraordinary reputation, celestial iron could never transform civilization. Meteorites were simply too uncommon. If humanity hoped to build plows, bridges, tools, and weapons from iron, people needed another source. That source surrounded them every single day, locked inside ordinary-looking rocks. The challenge was unlocking it. For centuries, countless furnaces burned across villages and cities. Potters improved kilns to fire stronger ceramics. Metalworkers searched constantly for hotter flames that could melt copper more efficiently. None of these craftsmen realized they were slowly approaching one of history's greatest technological breakthroughs. Every improvement in furnace design changed something. Taller walls trapped more heat. Charcoal replaced raw wood because it burned hotter and cleaner. Leather bellows forced fresh oxygen into the fire, feeding flames that ordinary campfires could never achieve. None of these innovations targeted iron specifically. They simply made existing work easier. But sometimes history changes because people solve one problem and accidentally answer another. Imagine a furnace roaring hotter than ever before. Charcoal glows almost white. Air rushes continuously through clay nozzles. Somewhere inside, pieces of iron-rich rock sit among burning fuel. The craftsman expects nothing unusual. Perhaps the rocks entered by accident. Perhaps they were mixed with other minerals. Perhaps they formed part of the furnace lining itself. Hours pass. The fire finally dies. Inside the ashes, something unexpected waits. There is no pool of glowing liquid metal. Iron refuses to melt at temperatures ancient furnaces could reach. Instead, hidden within blackened debris lies a rough, sponge-like mass unlike anything produced before. It looks ugly, porous, and covered with glassy waste. Most people might have thrown it away, but curiosity has always been humanity's greatest survival tool. Someone lifted that strange lump onto a stone anvil while it was still blazing hot. A hammer struck its surface, then another, then another. Instead of shattering like rock, it compressed. Dark impurities squeezed outward with every blow. Beneath the crust, metallic fibers fused together into something stronger. denser, and remarkably resilient. Without understanding atoms, molecules, or chemical reactions, that unknown blacksmith had performed one of the greatest experiments in human history. Fire had not melted the rock. It had quietly separated oxygen from iron, leaving behind metal hidden inside the stone since the birth of the planet. Humanity had discovered that some of the most valuable treasures in nature reveal themselves only after patience, persistence, and countless failures. That lesson would soon reshape every civilization on Earth. The first blooms of iron were far from perfect. Freshly forged iron was tough, but it was also relatively soft. A bronze blade made by an experienced craftsman could still outperform an early iron sword in many situations. If history rewarded only immediate results, the Bronze Age might have continued for centuries longer. But iron possessed one advantage bronze could never match. It was everywhere. Every valley, every mountain range, every river basin held the raw material needed to produce it. Once communities understood the process, they no longer depended on merchants crossing dangerous trade routes to deliver precious tin. A village with a forest for charcoal, a source of iron ore, and a skilled smith could manufacture its own tools. That single fact slowly shifted the balance of power away from wealthy kingdoms and toward ordinary communities. Like many great discoveries, iron improved through observation rather than theory. Ancient blacksmiths had no concept of electrons, crystal structures, or carbon diffusion. Instead, they trusted their eyes, ears, and experience. They learned that some ores consistently produced better blooms than others. They recognized the correct furnace temperature from the color of the flames. They listened to the rhythm of the bellows and judged whether the fire was healthy by the sound it made. Even the appearance of molten slag flowing from the furnace told them whether the smelt was succeeding or failing. Knowledge lived in memory rather than books. A master passed it to an apprentice who refined it slightly before passing it to the next generation. Across hundreds of years, tiny improvements accumulated into extraordinary expertise. Then, another accident changed history once again. Blacksmiths noticed that certain iron blades became noticeably harder after spending long periods buried beneath glowing charcoal. They did not know why, but they repeated the practice because it worked. Today, science provides the explanation they never possessed. At extremely high temperatures, iron can absorb carbon atoms from burning charcoal. Even a tiny amount of carbon transforms ordinary iron into steel. Heat the steel correctly, cool it rapidly, and its internal structure changes dramatically. The blade becomes harder, stronger, and capable of holding a razor-sharp edge through repeated use. No ancient smith could describe this transformation with chemistry, yet generations perfected it through careful experimentation. Steel did not emerge from a laboratory. It emerged from thousands of workshops where skilled hands noticed subtle differences that others overlooked. While blacksmiths refined their craft, history delivered an unexpected opportunity. Around 1200 BCE, much of the eastern Mediterranean entered one of the greatest crises of the ancient world. Powerful kingdoms collapsed within decades, palaces burned, trade routes disappeared, merchant fleets stopped arriving. The reasons remain debated today: climate change, earthquakes, warfare, famine, migration, and political instability likely combined into a devastating chain reaction. Whatever the exact cause, one consequence became immediately clear. Tin became incredibly difficult to obtain. Without tin, bronze production slowed dramatically. Societies suddenly faced a difficult choice: wait for trade networks to recover, or rely on the one metal available almost everywhere beneath their feet. Necessity became the greatest inventor. Ironworking spread rapidly because survival demanded it. As techniques improved, iron gradually surpassed bronze in both performance and affordability. Farmers who could never have afforded expensive bronze equipment now owned durable iron plows capable of cutting deeper into heavy soils. Harvests increased. Forests that had resisted stone and bronze axes slowly gave way to expanding farmland. Population grew alongside agricultural productivity. Soldiers equipped with iron spears and swords no longer represented a tiny elite. Entire armies could now carry effective weapons. Technology that once belonged primarily to kings began reaching ordinary people. Iron democratized metal itself. Every blacksmith became more than a craftsman. To those watching from outside the workshop, the process bordered on magic. Imagine entering a smoky forge carrying nothing but dull red rocks. Hours later, the smith hands you a shining axe capable of felling ancient trees or a blade strong enough to survive battle. No visible clue within the original stone hinted at its hidden potential. Unsurprisingly, blacksmiths occupied a special place in mythologies across the world. The Greeks imagined Hephaestus forging divine weapons beneath volcanoes. The Romans honored Vulcan as master of fire and metal. In West Africa, Ogun became the spiritual guardian of iron and craftsmanship. Norse legends celebrated mastersmiths capable of creating weapons fit for gods. These stories emerged independently because people everywhere witnessed the same astonishing transformation. The ability to turn stone into metal seemed to blur the line between human skill and supernatural power. Ironworking did not evolve along a single path. Different civilizations solved similar problems in remarkably different ways. In China, furnace technology advanced until iron could be completely melted, producing cast iron centuries before similar methods appeared in Europe. Although brittle cast iron proved ideal for cookware, farming equipment, and large-scale manufacturing, Chinese engineers later powered massive bellows with water wheels, dramatically increasing production efficiency. In India, metallurgists perfected crucible steel, creating the legendary material later associated with Damascus blades. These weapons earned legendary reputations for combining remarkable hardness with flexibility, qualities European smiths struggled to reproduce for centuries. Across parts of sub-Saharan Africa, ironworkers designed towering natural draft furnaces capable of achieving impressive temperatures without mechanical bellows. Their engineering reflected generations of experimentation perfectly adapted to local environments. These parallel achievements reveal an important truth. Human ingenuity is not confined to one culture or one civilization. Given similar challenges, different societies often discover equally brilliant solutions through entirely different journeys. Over time, iron became woven into nearly every aspect of daily life. Stronger nails transformed architecture, better chisels expanded stone construction, more reliable saws accelerated carpentry, durable horseshoes increased transportation efficiency. Iron chains lifted heavier loads. Better farming tools fed larger populations. Even simple household objects became stronger and longer lasting. Civilization gradually reorganized itself around a material that had once been dismissed as ordinary rock. Centuries later, medieval blast furnaces increased production far beyond what ancient bloomery furnaces could achieve. During the Industrial Revolution, inventors such as Henry Bessemer transformed steelmaking once again, reducing production costs while increasing quality on an unprecedented scale. Railways stretched across continents. Steel bridges crossed rivers once considered impossible to span. Ocean-going ships carried global trade farther than ever before. Skyscrapers reached heights unimaginable to previous generations. Every stage of progress rested upon the same fundamental chemical principle first uncovered inside ancient charcoal furnaces. Oxygen separated from iron, metal emerged from stone. Everything else was refinement. Modern archaeologists have recreated ancient bloomery furnaces using only historical materials and traditional techniques. They gather local iron ore, produce charcoal by hand, build clay furnaces, and pump leather bellows for hours exactly as ancient craftsmen once did. Again and again, the experiments succeed. Solid iron blooms emerge exactly where archaeology predicts they should. These reconstructions confirm something profoundly important. Ancient metalworkers did not need advanced science to create revolutionary technology. Careful observation, persistence, and generations of accumulated experience were enough. Modern microscopes now reveal microscopic structures inside ancient blades, allowing researchers to estimate forging temperatures, carbon content, cooling methods, and manufacturing techniques. Every surviving artifact preserves a hidden record of its own creation, waiting thousands of years for science to read it. One popular misconception claims that a single civilization suddenly invented iron and guarded the secret from everyone else. The archaeological evidence tells a different story. Ironworking appears across multiple regions over long periods, shaped by local experimentation, trade, migration, and shared knowledge. Another myth imagines one brilliant inventor discovering iron in a single, unforgettable moment. Reality was far more fascinating. Iron emerged through thousands of small observations, countless failures, and incremental improvements made by people whose names history never recorded. Civilization is often built not by famous geniuses but by anonymous craftsmen who simply refuse to stop experimenting. Look around any modern city today. Steel supports the buildings rising above the streets. Steel reinforces the concrete beneath your feet. Steel forms railway tracks, suspension bridges, cargo ships, automobiles, hospitals, factories, wind turbines, and the machines that manufacture almost everything else. Every beam, every bolt, every rail began as iron ore buried quietly beneath the ground, looking no different from the rocks ancient farmers stepped over thousands of years ago. The chemistry inside today's massive steel plants follows the same essential principle discovered by those early furnace builders. The scale has changed beyond imagination, but the underlying transformation remains remarkably familiar. Humanity did not conquer iron because it was easy. Humanity conquered iron because generation after generation refused to accept that an ordinary rock had nothing more to offer. The greatest discoveries often hide behind the most ordinary appearances. Somewhere beneath an unremarkable hillside, a forgotten blacksmith struck a glowing bloom with a hammer and unknowingly laid the foundation for the modern world. Every skyscraper that reaches toward the clouds, every train carrying millions of people, every bridge connecting distant shores still echoes the sound of those first hammer blows. The Iron Age never truly ended. It simply grew taller, stronger, and more ambitious, reminding you that civilization itself is often built not from rare miracles, but from common things finally understood.